Hey, Erev Tov, Chodesh Tov. So we spoke on Shabbat. I mentioned almost daily we have innovations, technologies, new discoveries that raise all sorts of questions which Torah has to come along and answer. I want to give just one example this evening, an example that comes out of our parasha, perhaps a surprising place. You know, when a lot of these questions come up, questions, unprecedented things that happen in the world, and we turn to the poskim, we look for answers from the Torah. And the question is, the first question that the posek always has to ask himself is, where do we look? Where do we find the answer? Where do we find the source? Right? Where do you find a precedent for something which is unprecedented? That's the challenge. And very often, the sources, the precedents come from very surprising places. One of the things that I find fascinating is when you have stories or you have sources, you have ideas, sometimes midrashim, sometimes marot, things which really seem impossible, things which seem, at best, like they could only exist in the realm of science fiction. And then modern technology comes along, creates something new, brings up a new question, and we find that something which seemed ridiculous, to put it bluntly, is actually something real. And is actually where we can find the source and where we find the answers to ethical questions that the rest of the world is struggling with. It doesn't know where to find an answer, but we have it in our Torah. So the example that I want to talk about is from this week's parasha. We'll get there in a moment. I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to start off with a Chacham Tzvi. Very, very interesting psak that he has. From there, we'll see how it's related to our parasha, and from there, we'll see how it's related to some of these modern innovations. We'll see if we finish today. If not, we'll carry on tomorrow. So the Chacham Tzvi has the following question that he discusses, going back 350 years, more or less. We know that throughout Jewish history, there have been stories, there have been legends, some of them may even be true, about what's called a golem. Right? A creature, the most famous story is the Golem of Prague, right? But it comes up in the Gemara as well, this idea where a golem is some sort of human-like creature, which comes from dust, is created using some sort of a Kabbalistic technique. Don't try this at home, but it looks like a human, it walks like a human, doesn't talk like a human. But the question is, this creature, like I said, there are stories throughout Jewish history. Some of them may be true, some of them may be legends. But Chazal discuss in the Gemara to what extent, this creature is a human life form and to what extent is it not. And whether this creature exists or not is irrelevant. The fact is, there are principles here which we can extrapolate. Principles which become very, very relevant, in the 21st century, all of a sudden, when you have things, it's not what I'm going to talk about, but you have artificial intelligence moving in certain directions. You have questions of autonomous beings. At what point? How do you differentiate what's a human, what's not a human? So these questions all of a sudden actually take on a new form. But the Chacham Tzvi asks a very interesting question. He says, if you have a golem, right, let's say you're in shul, you're waiting for Mincha, right? This is thankfully this isn't a problem here, but you have it in many places. It's getting close to Shkia. You're stuck with 9 men. You need the 10th. You're waiting for a minyan. And there's no one. You go outside. You say Mincha. No one's there. No one's on the street. It's not Yerushalayim. This is in Prague. It's a little bit harder. Whatever it is. So could you just create a golem if you knew how, and then your golem could join you for the minyan? Okay, you laugh. This is a serious question which the poskim discuss. Can a golem be part of a minyan? You'll see where I'm going. Anyway, the Chacham Tzvi, this is the question he asks. Can you count the golem as one of your minyan, one of your mezuman, one of the 10 for dvarim shebiktusha? The answer that he gives is, anybody want to guess? Okay, we've got a machloket. Great. So we have Yesh Omrim yes, Yesh Omrim no. Chacham Tzvi says no. He says no. You cannot count your golem for a minyan. You're going to have to work a little bit harder to get the 10th. And how does he prove it? What's his source? So his source is the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Fascinating story. The Gemara tells us about a golem. It says Rabbah created a golem, And he sent this creature to Rabbi Zera. And Rabbi Zera is talking to this creature, this golem. He doesn't answer him back. And he realizes that this person, again, it looks like a human, it walks like a human, it doesn't talk. Rabbi Zera realizes this is a golem, this is not a real person. And he says, go back, return to dust. And in so doing, the golem disappears. It goes back to dust. Now, the Chacham Tzvi analyzes the Gemara as follows. He says, forget about murder, we'll come back to murder, killing in a moment. But he says that if this creature could serve a purpose, could serve a constructive purpose by joining the minyan, whatever it was, then he wouldn't just destroy it like that. He wouldn't just turn it back into dust. He would keep it alive. He would use it. Be baltashket, be whatever he wants, but he's wasting something which serves a constructive purpose in the world. He says, therefore, it does not serve this purpose. It can't count for dvarim shebiktusha. Doesn't count for a minyan. And he says, what about, why don't you ask me a greater question? By killing this creature, he is killing. We know that the most severe sins, as far as murder, he says there was never a hava mina. There was never a hava mina to say that murder, that shvichut damim would apply to this creature, to this golem. Why? He says we have an explicit pasuk. We have an explicit verse from this week's parasha, Parashat Noach. After the flood, right, the Torah talks about the issur of murder, and it says, Shofech dam ha'adam, be'adam damo yishafech. A very interesting pasuk. It follows the chiastic structure. Those words switch around. Shofech dam ha'adam, somebody who spills the blood of man, be'adam, by man, damo yishafech. His blood shall be spilled. A murder, this is a capital crime. This is a capital offense. Says the Chacham Tzvi, now the Gemara has a number of drashot on this pasuk. Says the Chacham Tzvi, if you just look at the words and you read it literally, look what comes out. Right? Shofech dam ha, the way we read it, I'll say it again, because we don't have the pasuk in front of us. But Shofech dam ha'adam, be'adam damo yishafech. That's one way of reading it. Says the Chacham Tzvi, we can read, and says the Gemara, we can read it differently. Shofech dam, one who spills blood of who? Ha'adam be'adam, of a person in a person. That person is culpable. That is where you have you committed the capital crime. It's only if this was a person who was in a person, it was Adam ba'Adam, and he says the golem was never a person in a person. Who is Adam sheba'Adam? Says the Gemara. This is uba b'meimor, right? This is a fetus that is inside the mother's womb. That is a person who is a person. Every person who's been born in the history of mankind, with barring one or two exceptions right at the very beginning, this is how they came into the world. And that is what the pasuk is talking about. But this creature, which was never like that is not a human being, therefore not subject to murder, not subject to these other things. That's not considered a human being. Okay, so that is a somewhat esoteric psak tshuva of the Chacham Tzvi 350 years ago, talking about these mystical creatures which may or may not exist. What on earth has this got to do? Where am I going with this? So I'll tell you where I'm going. This idea of Adam ve'Adam versus not Adam ve'Adam becomes very, very relevant if we go back to the late 1970s. Okay? In the late 1970s, the world's first IVF baby is born. Okay? IVF, in vitro fertilization, and this is a technology which has since then has advanced exponentially all the time. As I said, there's more technologies that are coming out, more questions that are being raised, many, many different things we could discuss, many questions this raises. But one of them is as follows. How does IVF, in vitro fertilization, work? So what happens is the sperm and the eggs are taken together in a laboratory, they are fertilized there, and you have these embryos which are then reimplanted back into the womb. Okay, and then from there, when the procedure is successful, from there ultimately a baby will be born. But what happens is, in order to increase the chances of success, you don't have the situation normally where a natural birth will take place. Generally speaking, each month when fertilization takes place inside the body, there'll be one egg which is fertilized, which creates one embryo, or maybe two. If it splits up, you have twins, right? So one or two, but not more than that. When IVF is done in a lab, in order to increase the chances of success, because you don't know, first of all, if the egg's going to be fertilized. If the egg is fertilized, you don't know that it's going to be high enough quality, the embryo, if it's going to be implanted, if a birth will take place or not. So many eggs are taken, and they are fertilized. So you have a situation where you have, let's say, one couple comes through IVF and they have a happy ending, right? There's the embryo is implanted and a baby is born, but there are another 10, 15 embryos, whatever it is, that are left now in the lab. What happens to those? What do you do with those? These are embryos. These are the beginning of a potential life. This is a potential human being. Each one of those potentially could be implanted back in the womb and could become a human being. At what point do we say does life begin? What do we do with all those embryos that are left behind in the lab? Okay. Now, if you'll say, okay, over there, it's just maybe an academic question. Obviously, you'll run out of space at some point, but you have them, you leave them behind. What's the big deal? So we fast forward another few years, and we see the technology advances a little bit more. And we have something what's called PGD and PGS, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis or screening, whereby now it's not just the case that the egg and the sperm the sperm fertilizes the egg and you have the embryo, and one of those embryos is chosen to go back to implant it in the womb, but whereby you have, let's say you have a couple where one or both are carriers of a genetic disease. And then the situation is, it's not so simple to just take any of those embryos back, because that potential child may carry a disease which is going to be debilitating for the rest of its life. So therefore you would go and you would examine, you would check those embryos, and certain ones of those you would not want to, you'd want to destroy them, because you wouldn't want to bring that life into the world that's going to. Okay, we fast forward another few years, a few decades perhaps, and then we get to stem cell technology. Okay, which is something which is still under development, but works on the same principles as this, whereby what are stem cells? Stem cells are the cells which ultimately will be part of the embryo, part of the human being at the beginning, before they've differentiated into any type, have lots of different uses in terms of medical research, in terms of testing new medicines, in terms of growing new tissues, in terms of providing cures and advancing medicine. Where are the stem cells procured from? One of the places where stem cells come are from these embryos. So if one wants to advance, wants to move forward in this realm of stem cell research, what you're essentially saying is you're taking this embryo, which is a potential life, right? And instead of implanting it, and instead of allowing it to grow and to develop into a human life, you are taking those cells out, you're doing something else with them. In other words, you are killing, quote unquote, this embryo. Now, other religions are very, very, very strict on this. And they will say that from the moment of conception, from the moment that egg is fertilized by the sperm, that is a human life, that is a human being. Anything that you do from there would be murder. That's what some others say. What does Judaism say about all of this, about these questions? So we go back to our Chacham Tzvi, and we go back to our pasuk. Now, originally, when these questions come up, maybe one of the first shuvot that deal with this, going back to the late 80s, right? Very, very shortly, of Chaim David Alevi, of Mordechai Eliyahu, right in Asia and Tchumen, in some of the journals, they were asked a question by doctors, what do they do with the leftover embryos? Can they be destroyed? And they just say very simply, yes, they can. This is not considered, it's not considered murder, whatever it is, without explaining. One of the explanations, perhaps where it comes from, that is from Professor Steinberg and from others, is that this pasuk that says, when do we encounter this problem, this question of shfichut damim, of murder? It says, Adam be'adam. It's a person and a person. When it is an embryo that was implanted in a womb, from that moment on, it starts to take on the form of human life. Before that, now this is not to say you can do whatever you want with it, it's not to say you can waste it, damage it unnecessarily, but before it's been implanted, before it's been Adam be'adam, at least for the purposes of being a fully fledged, bona fide human being, it's not there yet. It's not there yet, and therefore, certainly in these cases where there's a medical need, there's a medical reason for it, that would be something which would allow one to destroy it, to use it for the benefits of that research, which ultimately will be life-saving, or for whatever other needs it may be. Rabbi Hanania ben Akash אומר, "Tzakadosh Baruch Hu zakot Yisrael lefichach ba'alem tzom mitzvot, shnei amadrei chafetz man tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadut."